everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is a little bit different, as you can probably tell based on this little setup I have going on here. So I wanted to take some time today to swatch my 5 favorite matte shadows and my 5 favorite shimmer shadows in my whole collection. This video idea was inspired by a little mini series I recently did over on my Instagram. So I created a whole bunch of short little reels of my favorite 3 mattes and favorite 3 shimmers from different color categories. So for example, I did one for greens, I did one for purples, I did one for warm neutrals, one for cool neutrals, on, kind of throughout my whole collection. That was a super fun activity for me. I really enjoyed it, but it also got my wheels turning in terms of what are the mattes and shimmer shades that I actually really use and can't really imagine not having in my collection. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the 5 mattes first and the 5 shimmers second. And we are starting out today with the shade Connection from the Ametrine Mini Crystal Palette. I love this shade because it's like a perfect mauve. Just building up a second layer. I hope you can see how beautiful that matte shade is. Next up is this bottom right-hand shade in the Juvia's Place Nomad palette. And this is like a grungy, yellowy green, but it's also definitely like brown based. And I just think that I can't really imagine not having this as my main pop of color if I were to kind of narrow down my collection. Next up, coming from the newest palette in my collection, is the shade Twig from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. This shade for me is the perfect neutral brown. You'll see on the swatch here, it's not too warm, not too cool. It's like my ideal level of depth for a crease color, so that is definitely a staple in my collection. And to go along with that cooler toned brown, I would also want something nice and warm. And I was super surprised when I was looking through all of the gorgeous matte brown shades in my collection that my favorite warm matte brown was actually this one right here, the first one in the e.l.f. bite-sized palette in the shade Pumpkin Spice. So it's this first one right here, and you'll see when I swatch it that for me and my skin tone, it's just a perfect matte brown. I partially chose this one because it is warmer than any bronzer I have. And if you know me and you know my channel, you know I love to use my bronzer as a crease color. I think it really ties a whole look together. But I would definitely want something like 1 step cooler than my bronzer and 1 step warmer, just so that I have some variety. And last up for the mattes, again, if you've been on my channel a while, you can probably guess that I need a matte dark brown. And I swatched again all of them in my collection, and this one did not surprise me. My absolute favorite was my shade Dark Chocolate from Sydney Grace. So this is a single shadow. You have to buy it kind of all on its own. You can't get it in any sort of like palette format, but that's why I own it, because even though I have other matte browns in my collection that are gorgeous as well, I love the warm undertones of this one. Such a good shade. So these 5 mattes could really get me most looks that I personally want to do on an everyday basis. And I took the same approach when I was picking shimmers. So I kept finding myself reaching into all of my like special shades in each palette and like the things that really stand out to me most or kind of make me want to swatch them. But then I had to take a step back and say like, okay, really, Morgan, what shimmers would you actually use on a frequent enough basis that if they were your last 5 shimmers in your collection, you would be happy with them? And that totally shifted my mindset away from kind of those more special and colorful shades and more towards some neutrals and kind of classic finishes and shadows that I've always loved and reached for every time I want a really beautiful classic makeup look. So first up here, dipping straight back into Sydney Grace, I am going into Tiara. Again, these are sold as singles, and this is in their pressed pigment formula. First things first, you know I would need a really beautiful taupe in my collection. I love a shade like this on my blue eyes in particular. I just think that it really makes them pop because that silver kind of picks up on the blue undertones. To complement that, on the warm side of the family, I am going into Dahlia in the Juvia's Place Masquerade mini palette. And I love this shade because it's like a bronze slash copper that's not too deep. So it still is really beautiful and brightening, but gives that nice warm feel to things while still being like nice and light and helping my kind of small eyes look a little bit bigger and more open. Number 3 is a nice deep shimmery brown, and for me, the perfect one here is Da Coco from the ColourPop Going Coconuts palette. It's a nice deep shimmery brown, but it's not too warm or too cool. It's like right in that perfect middle space. And I feel like it's not quite doing it justice here on camera. It looks a little lighter toned on camera right now because it's reflecting my lights so much, but it does have definitely like a deeper base. You can kind of see down at this end, and that's why I love it. It's still beautiful and reflective, but it has that depth in there. Second to last, we are back in the Aether Beauty Ametrine Mini Crystal palette, and I'm going right here for this bottom shade called Rose Gold. All of the shades in this palette are stunning, and I'd have a hard time giving up any of them, but these two in particular really speak to my heart. Oh my gosh. Every time I swatch this one, I'm just reminded of how much I love this palette. It is like the most sophisticated shimmer. It's so smooth, so gorgeous. If you have textured eyelids, these shadows from Aether will be your best friend because they are so smoothing and so gorgeous. They're still somehow so reflective despite the fact that they don't emphasize texture at all. And then last up, as I was looking at these shimmers after I had picked these 4 and trying to think about what was missing, I knew that the answer was something very brightening because I like to have a really bright inner corner. I sometimes like to highlight my brow bone. So I just always need something that's basically white with maybe a hint of some other shades in there. And in my collection, the shadow that gives me that with absolute certainty is the shade Pearl from Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry. It is like a true white champagne. It is so creamy and so reflective. I absolutely love this shadow. I've also found with this shade that if you kind of tap it out enough on your lids and put down kind of a thin layer, you really can get like almost a lid topper look with this shade. So I appreciate that versatility from it as well. Okay, and that is it. The top 5 shimmers and mattes that I would pick out of my whole collection if I just had to keep 10. So I guess another way you could say this is like, this is my perfect everyday palette. If I had to put together like a collection of shades that I use most often, this would probably be it. So I'm going to just go ahead and insert here some of the swatches just in natural light so that you can really see what they look like without my studio lights on them. And then I'll bring you just back to this view really quickly to sign off. So thank you so much for watching this video. It was extremely fun for me to put together, and I really appreciate your support for this type of content because this is what I enjoy. I love looking at the things I already own and realizing how much I love them. If you enjoyed this video, I would love to have you subscribe to my channel before you go. Also, please remember to like my videos if you enjoy them and comment down below as well with your favorite shadows in your collection. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.